everyone. So in this video, we're going to talk about the second type of noun clauses, which are clauses derived from yes/no questions. So we'll get there in just a second. I want to do a quick review once again on what we mean when we talk about noun clauses. So very simply, when we talk about noun clauses, we are talking about clauses that function like nouns in a sentence. So that means we might have a subject complement, a direct object, an object of the prepositional phrase, etc. Okay. The other thing when we're talking about noun clauses, so clauses that function like nouns in a sentence, is that they are essential for a grammatically complete sentence, right? So if we cross them out, the sentence will not make grammatical sense. So let's go ahead then and talk about this second type of noun clause that we have in English. So the second type comes from yes, no questions, right? So often they begin as yes, no questions, or we're blending yes, no questions with declarative statements. And they rely on if and whether. So these two words, okay? So let's take a look at a couple of examples so you get an idea of what we mean and what I'm talking about. So let's look at the first example. Was she glad to be chosen, right? This is a yes or no question. I would say yes or no, right, in response. So this is where we are getting or deriving it from a yes/no question. I wondered that. So it's a declarative statement, but that refers right to that yes/no question. So the form of noun clause that we get with a type 2 noun clause is we can replace that with the entire right clause as long as we're using the word if or whether. So I could say, I wondered if she was glad to be chosen, right? Now I cannot delete, right, if she was glad to be chosen, because I wondered, we would want to know what was being wondered. So the sentence doesn't quite function or doesn't quite make sense on its own without, right, this noun clause. And this is what we have. So it's a clause that's functioning in the same way a noun does. So we're replacing that with the full clause, okay? Let's take a look at a second example. Did fairies ever have mating bonds with humans? I didn't have the nerve to ask this. So once again, in this example, this refers to this entire question, which is, once again, a yes/no question, right? We'd say yes or no to that question. So if I were rewriting it, I would say, I didn't have the nerve to ask whether fairies ever had mating bonds with humans, right? And then I'm going to end it with a period because it's no longer a question. I'm also turning it into a declarative statement. And we are replacing the entirety of this with the noun clause, right? Or this whole clause that functions like a noun, and we're using whether to introduce it. And then once again, right, we cannot delete it and have the sentence still make sense, right? I didn't have the nerve to ask. We'd probably be like, ask what? You need, right, the rest of it in order to finish that sentence. So this is not entirely different from type 1 noun clauses. They're clauses that are still functioning like nouns. What's important to be aware of is that this form of noun clause is just inspired by yes or no questions. And that's where we see the introduction of words like if or whether.